Hello YouTube, this is Neon. This is part 3 of my series on compassionate listening. Where I left off on part 2 was basically that if somebody's talking with us about something that's serious, we probably shouldn't be on our cell phone texting and doing stuff on the online, even if we have this unique ability to repeat everything that they say word for word. Doing something like that is not compassionate listening, and it really shows no interest in what the person has to say. Part of compassionate listening is showing interest. Of course, not doing this, staring at the person as they're speaking the whole time, right? But there should be some eye contact, some looking in the person's direction, okay, is a means of showing interest. So, wow, listening to another person in this manner shows that we are separate, independent, autonomous human beings. So this is listening versus what I call bantering. I remember a gentleman sharing something that was a little different. He was in his 60s, married. I believe, though I may be wrong, he had been married to the same woman since his youth. He was sharing amongst people around his age, perhaps a little older, that they had made a decision to never have children. To which someone interjected their thoughts into what he had said by saying, you know, people who choose not to have children are very selfish people. To which I thought to myself, where do you come up with that conclusion? Some of the most selfish people on this planet are people who have children. I didn't interject my thoughts, but that's what I was thinking. This person responded by saying, you're right, we're selfish, and that kind of ended it. That's what I mean by bantering. If a person happens to share a thought that's just slightly outside of the norm, then another person has to come in, interject their thought, and try to alter what the first person says. They can't just let that person express a thought, let that thought be in the air, and let that person be autonomous, even though they disagree. That's bantering. That's what I also refer to as henpecking, where people try to prevent other people from getting ahead. And by getting ahead, in this case, I mean simply being different. Being a mature man and woman who makes the decision to not have children and not be judged by that, not be told you're selfish. Listening is not bantering, again, as I describe it. By the way, I consider that kind of talk to be oppressive. Oppressive, I really do. If I happen to mention the degree to which I observe Sabbath, let's say with someone who I'm of the same religion, and they say, well, I observe Sabbath in a much more orthodox way. That's a little offensive. Again, it's henpecking. It's henpecking. I remember doing this with someone, and I don't really observe Sabbath that strictly. And of course, she needed me to know that she does observe it much more strictly, and she wouldn't be as relaxed as I am. But I'm comfortable with my level of observance, and I don't tend to be as observant as she. But that's another situation where a person's not allowed to freely express themselves without the other person having to interject their thoughts. In this case, sort of comparison and contradiction. In the case of the couple in their 60s who chose not to have children, just really being judgmental against them. It's oppressive. It's oppressive because we don't allow a person to freely express themselves without having to edit their thoughts or superimpose our thoughts. We can't just allow their thoughts just to exist. So many of these things are where people make judgments or interrupt or interject or make comparisons. They're as neutral as the way women and men urinate. Women tend to sit down, men tend to stand up. I sit down because I don't like wiping up the seat. You know, while I do believe that men should wipe, the reality is that it comes out like a sprinkler, right? So men can't really help it. Hopefully they wipe up after themselves. Women have to sit down because their physiology is different. But to make comparisons, a lot of times when we are making comparisons because someone shares something about their life, it's all neutral and subjective and doesn't even matter. So to make a comparison of something of the nature of how somebody goes number one, a lot of it's just senseless and silly. It's just silly. I have written down here 70 versus 85 miles on the freeway. 70 versus 85 miles on the freeway? I'm not sure that I understand what I was trying to get at with it. I probably should have reviewed this a little more clearly, a little more thoroughly. So anyway, there's two extremes where listening can be instrumental or detrimental to the speaker. There's actually more situations too. When a person is suicidal and they call someone, they need to talk to someone, although that may fit in here. So when a person is sharing past traumatic experiences or problems, listening can be instrumental. Compassionate listening can be instrumental or detrimental to the person who's speaking. When people are sharing their issues, the person who speaks, unfortunately, they tend to think that that person is looking for an answer or a solution to their issues, when in fact, the person who is speaking is just looking to express their feelings. That's it. But the person who's listening automatically believes that they have a duty to give the solution to that person's problem. And listen up, nobody knows a person's problem better than the person who is living that problem. Okay? When the person expresses, now if a person wants a person's advice, that person will likely ask. If the person doesn't ask, it's because they're looking to express their feelings. They're not looking for advice. Okay? And people, when they're listening, as I said, they assume that the person who's speaking about their issues or trauma wants advice or wants their input. And they typically don't. People come up with their own solutions by being listened to or heard by the listener. Very important. The fact and the act of compassionate listening in and of itself is therapeutic. It is therapeutic for the person who's speaking. When the person doesn't interrupt and interject with platitudes and cliches and comparisons and all this stuff that I talked about before, when the person listens compassionately. When a person is sharing their trauma or they're sharing their goals and dreams, it's like taking their thoughts and throwing them on a wall. And they can begin to see all of their thoughts. They are able to do that when they are speaking with another human being. Not when they're recording, not when they're speaking to a wall. There is something magical about that interaction when the person who is listening is capable of doing compassionate listening as I have described it. There is something magical in that the person, in that process of compassionate listening, the person who is speaking is able, as I said, to place all of their thoughts almost like as if they're on a wall. The wall, in a sense, would be the person who is listening. As they do so, they are then able to come up with their own solution to their problems. That's magical, but that assumes that the person who is listening is doing compassionate listening and not the things that I said before that we should not do. Likewise, with big dreams and big goals. When a person is sharing big dreams and big goals with somebody else, there is a social phenomenon that is known as the crab theory, whereby when someone is sharing their dreams, particularly big dreams and goals, like becoming a famous singer or a big-time business owner, or perhaps a famous public speaker, or even a great philanthropist. When a person is sharing dreams, an inventor, this social phenomenon known as the crab theory comes in. And so the person will respond after listening to the speaker sharing their dreams. They will respond in terms of how that person's dreams, should they come true, how that would reflect on them. So the typical thing is, the typical way that that would reflect on them is, wow, if you were to, if you, I'm going to make me the bad guy. If you were to achieve all those dreams, that would make me look like a loser. So I'm going to give you every reason why what you would want to achieve would fail. And I will tell you that I'm doing it for your own good and to protect you. But in reality, what I would be doing is trying to steal your dream, because if you achieved your dream would make me look pretty bad, because in all likelihood, my dream is just to go to school and get a degree and get a good job. Some examples of these would be what Henry Ford went through, what the Wright brothers went through. In the case of Henry Ford, people kept commenting, what is that contraption you're working on? In the case of the Wright brothers and other people who were trying to invent the plane, people would say stuff along the lines of, if God wanted people to fly, he'd have given them wings, or if God wanted people to fly, he'd have given them feathers, or something along those lines. Likewise, with me getting in better shape, I'm in good shape now. The typical response that I get from people who are not, most people are not as thin as I am, right, or in as good a shape as I am in, who I hook up with or who I know. The typical response that they'll give me is, wow, you're already in good shape, you don't need to get in any better shape. And a lot of that just comes from, you already look better than me. If you have a body that's any better than me now, you're going to really make me look bad. Even though they'll tell me, oh, you look fine already, you don't need to get in any better shape. It's all about stealing someone's dream, because that dream makes the person look bad. The mastermind principle, which Napoleon Hill talks about, whereby if a person is able to share their dreams with another person, and that person listens compassionately, you can have more minds that work together, and so that person's dream, if they are able to communicate harmoniously and the listener doesn't interject and interrupt and tell them why they shouldn't achieve their dream, and why it's going to fail and this kind of stuff, two perfectly harmonious minds, two or more, can achieve great things. So it's interesting how powerful compassionate listening can be. I'm going to conclude part 3 for now, and I will upload part 4, or I will record part 4 later. If you like my video, please like, subscribe, share, comment, commercial, recommend my videos. Do one or more of those things. Thank you. Best wishes.